Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. Hope it's a good day where you are. I have a wonderful, wonderful author and book that we're going to be talking about today that I want to share with you. Most of you know that I am very into the aspect of consciousness and how we use it and where it comes from and what it is. And I have Shelli Renée Joye with me today, and she has a Ph.D. in electrical engineering, Indian philosophy, and consciousness studies. And early in her career, she joined John Lilly to study human-dolphin interspecies communication and sensory deprivation. For several years, she studied contemplation with the founder of Naropa University. And since completing her doctorate in consciousness studies at the California Institute of Integral Studies, she's authored 22 books, of which we are going to be talking about tonight, an exploration of the entity of the conscious universe. And the book is fascinating. I highly recommend that you read it because she gives you such a marvelous explanation as to the studies in consciousness that have been going on for decades and decades. But today we're going to be talking about consciousness. And this book helps it develops the concept of the metaverse, the transcendental universe, composed of additional hidden dimensions operating in parallel with space and time. And it integrates and maps the theories of consciousness developed by Carl Jung, David Bohm, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and other scientists. And it offers us with a path to the hidden dimensions through detailed maps of the psyche and the cosmos. It gives us a better understanding of what it is we're working with or trying to work with, I think is maybe a better way to put it. And it gives us a great understanding of what work has been done and how that work has evolved. I find it fascinating that you have physical science trying to describe to me what is an etheric quality, and it does a magnificent job. So welcome to the show, Shelli. So glad you're with us.
Happy to be with you.
Your book, you've written so many books. It's just amazing that you're able to spread yourself this way. How did your research, how did your interest in looking into consciousness come about?
Well, when I was a kid, I was always interested in science and also art. So it's kind of an unusual combination, but in university, I studied physics and then eventually electrical engineering. And it was a 5-year program, a lot of science. But I married an artist, and so I ended up taking LSD on the beach once in California with her to start out, and it was so much more fascinating than anything I was studying in physics and engineering, although I love science and math. And it was more mysterious. I mean, and I wondered why scientists, there was no research being done on consciousness. And I even actually tried to look for a program at some university that would, because I thought, well, I could use my electrical engineering and physics understanding to maybe help explore consciousness. But I couldn't find anything. And I continued to, every couple of weekends, we would try LSD or psilocybin, mushrooms, or mescaline even back then. And there was a whole world of consciousness, an ocean of awareness that would open up, especially if, I'm sure some of your listeners have experienced it too.
Oh yeah.
But it changed the direction of my life. I got seriously interested as a professional thing. And although I didn't know how I would make much of a living doing it because there's no jobs open to, we need somebody to study consciousness. So I actually had a regular computer job for many years and raised my son and daughter. And then when I got early retirement, I decided to go back to school and study consciousness seriously. By then they had programs of consciousness studies in most of the universities. So I did that, and it was like the icing on the cake of my life. I was able to really spend the time to read a lot of things that I normally wouldn't have been able to do without a program and a goal and some structure to it. So I've read quite a bit and thought quite a bit, and I've experienced quite a bit. And my understanding of consciousness has really deepened a lot, such that I feel that I have some pretty good theories. I've written 23 books. Some of them really get down into the details of physics. But what I'm actually more interested in is the experience of consciousness and how us human beings can use our consciousness to grow, to become more conscious, and to actually even enter some of these dimensions that normally you have to take psychedelic drugs to enter. And I discovered that you can. There are ways of developing what Teilhard de Chardin called it the cosmic sense. And other scientists who have been interested in consciousness in a serious way, most of them say that there's a new way of perceiving. You need to sort of awaken a fifth sense. It's not your vision, it's not your hearing, and it can be developed in several ways. One of which is just learning to meditate and practicing meditation, and sort of like teaching yourself how to experience and feel these other dimensions. When I mentioned other dimensions, that's a very key thing to my understanding, and it's becoming prevalent among other consciousness researchers, that there are more than just the dimensions that we use for seeing and hearing and touching. There are 11 dimensions in physics, quantum physics. Only 4 of them are the ones we're familiar with as human beings, which are the 3 of space, X, Y, and Z, like a 3-dimensional cube, and time. Pretty much time and space are so actually physicists call it space-time. They put the word together and say space-time, and almost all of their measurements, the instruments they use, are developed to measure things in space-time. So there are, according to, they actually have proof now of the other 7 dimensions, so 11 dimensions total, according to the data from the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. It's one of these very huge underground atomic accelerators that collides particles and then takes super fast photographs of what comes off. And doing that, they discovered there must be, for the mathematics to work and to be able to predict what happens, there are 11 dimensions to reality. So what are these other dimensions? Most of the physicists don't try to speculate on what this means. They just want to measure them and write another paper. But there was a physicist named David Bohm, who I've read much of his work and really followed. That he was interested in what's called the ontological understanding of things. In other words, what does it mean? What do the science principles mean in terms of reality in our life and the universe? What kind of understanding and knowledge can you get out of that? And when regular physicists start talking about these other 7 dimensions, they call them the hidden dimensions. And they say they're very tiny. They're so tiny we can't measure them.
Yeah.
Well, I also studied philosophy, so I'm able to realize that the fallacy is they're saying they're small, but you can only talk about small and big in space-time. They're not in space-time. Space and time are 4 other dimensions. So these other dimensions aren't small. They're just hidden from our normal sensory systems.
Yeah.
But my belief is that yogis and mystics and saints and seers and psychics, they have all learned how, whether for some of them through birth, just genetically maybe, but most of them through practicing esoteric practices to tune their consciousness into these other dimensions. They use sweat lodges like the Native Americans, and a really good way is psychotropic drugs used, in a healthy way. When I was with my artist X, we went to a lot of parties, and people would want to take these psychedelics at parties, and I wouldn't do it. For me, they aren't recreational. They help you explore reality. And I was really interested in what's going on there. So that led me to read lots and lots of books. During my years as a computer software engineer, I read lots of esoteric books by Steiner and Blavatsky, some of the theosophists, and a lot of Western saints. And I got really interested in the philosophies of India, because it seems that Indians through the centuries have really explored consciousness, both with drugs and meditation. And I wanted to read what they wrote, what they thought they saw. One of the problems with exploring consciousness is if you start to develop the sense, so you become aware of these other hidden dimensions, it's very hard to communicate to other people what you experience, because there are no words. It's like in the country of the blind, they wouldn't understand what red and black and white and vision is, because without the words, it's hard to really think or talk or communicate. So what's happened is you get lots of the descriptions of consciousness in India are Sanskrit words. There's a lot of really good Sanskrit words that try to describe these other states of awareness and how to get to them and how to navigate them. And one of the very best books I found is called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Many people read the Yoga Sutras. They're like a complete description of developing your awareness to start to experience what's called samadhi. Samadhi is a Sanskrit word which means all together. So it's all of your senses together, and like a new sense opens up. So you can become aware of other beings, and even the departed, people who have died. They've just gone on to these other dimensions. One way of looking at it too is there's a mathematician who's developing models of consciousness, and he has found that, and he believes that consciousness is primarily in these other dimensions. Consciousness is primarily outside of time and space, and it looks through us. We're sort of like VR goggles, virtual reality goggles. The human body and senses is like a what would you call it? He relates them to goggles. But another way of seeing it is avatars. Our bodies are sort of avatars for people who've seen the movie Avatar. I think most people have. So they would realize that the person's consciousness in the avatar was back, in a pod somewhere. Well,
Yes.
according to Donald Hoffman, the mathematician from MIT who's doing this, consciousness is in the other dimensions primarily, and it only comes into space-time through our bodies and through the bodies of animals and insects and even what we think are inert objects like volcanoes and clouds. It's in philosophy. It's called panpsychism. Panpsychism is the philosophy that as opposed to what scientists tend to say that only humans are conscious. Many scientists say only humans are conscious. Not even shellfish are conscious. Only humans. Yeah. But the panpsychists believe that consciousness is the foundation of the universe, and I'll bring in another scientist. Well, I think I mentioned him a little while ago, David Bohm. He believed that consciousness is in these other dimensions also, very much so. And so when we try to think about it, we normally we're trapped within our normal biological cognitive brain mind, which depends on memory and words and things like that. But the trick for developing the sense that lets you reach into these other dimensions, sort of like a Stargate thing, is learning to make your thoughts to not be attached to your thoughts and to try to let them to stop. Silence is a big thing. In fact, Saint Benedict in the Catholic Church, he's the founder of a lot of monasteries. He wrote a book, The Rules of Saint Benedict. The very first word he used in his whole thing was silence. Silence for contemplatives is the most important thing. And it doesn't mean silence of your vocal cords. It means silence of your mind and your memories.
Yes.
So, you can take courses on meditation and get some very complicated instructions. But the most fundamental thing you can do yourself, if you just try for 10 minutes, in a quiet room, it's good to have external silence so it doesn't distract you. In the dark is actually even better, like sitting on a cushion in the dark, a comfortable room. And just, I ask people to try for 10 minutes. I use a timer for my meditation. I meditate 30 minutes a day when I can. But in the beginning, it was really, really hard to stop my mind, even for 1 minute. They say nature loves a vacuum. Well, the human mind doesn't seem to want a vacuum. If there's any space in it, it's like you have an inbox with all kinds of thoughts and memories and, what's for dinner and did I pay that bill and did that person like me and what do I do next? Or how long have I been meditating? All these things are obstacles to reaching the silence. At some point, it's like riding a bicycle. At some point, if you practice enough and you believe you can open up to these other senses, you'll find that you start to feel something beyond yourself. Maybe it's beyond yourself outside, and maybe it's beyond yourself inside, very deep down inside. What I like David Bohm was he was a particle physicist, a quantum physicist, and he believed that consciousness was very small. It was like at the bottom of bedrock of our universe, even smaller than atoms and electrons. That there were these units of consciousness, which the philosopher Whitehead called actual occasions or actual entities. That the universe is made up of these billions and billions of tiny little drops of consciousness. And sometimes these consciousness drops coalesce into a larger form, like a human or a cat or a rock. And rock has its own kind of consciousness. That's why people, when they go on pilgrimages, especially in India, but also in the West and Asia, people find special holy places. Even the Catholic Church has Lourdes and some very special places where you can actually feel the consciousness of people who have been there. Because consciousness does not die. That's another thing. It exists outside of time and space. So it's in a timeless, spaceless, eternal set of dimensions, hidden dimensions. And that's where we go when we die. That's where we go when we drop our virtual reality avatar that we grow it, and we live in it for 50, 60, 70 years, and then it fades away a little bit. And then we have to finally let go. But we continue in these other dimensions.
Yes.
And so it's possible, if you realize that that's very possible, and I do, and I've experienced a lot of it, then it's possible to contact those who've gone beyond. I mean, they've done that in the 1800s with seances, Mr. Ott wants to contact his wife who just passed away. Well, you can. And it's a matter of belief and willpower and practice. It's not that they talk to you in English words or, whatever language is your natural language, but the feeling is there. You can feel them. You can reach out and it's like dialing their telephone number, their conscious fingerprint. When we all come together, we have this energy body, and the energy bodies, you can actually see it with a night vision scope, the sniper scopes at night.
Yeah.
We radiate all of this energy. We radiate 5 watts continuous energy, enough to light up a light bulb pretty much, but it's in the infrared, so normally we can't see it. But all this energy is a kind of a living consciousness, and when two people get together, they imprint one another. Especially if they have sex. That's even stronger imprinting.
Yes, that's very strong.
Just by visiting someone, they go to see the holy man. They call that in India darshan. Darshan means to be able to see and share. They share the holy man's vibrations, his consciousness. In other words, it's like he gives them his telephone number, and that's stored in your body, your heart, your hydrocarbon molecular structure. And so even the people like your father, your mother, your grandmother, people who've gone beyond, they dropped their avatar vision goggles. They're no longer here with us, but they're in eternity. In other words, they're not in time and space anymore, but there are 7 other dimensions, which science has just barely begun to even look for them. They've discovered them in quantum physics, but they don't know how to make measurements in those. And the only way to actually get there is through the human body, the human psyche. You have to, learn how to do it. And taking psychedelics, even cannabis helps a little bit. Coffee helps you stay awake. I mean, the Chinese, the Taoists who used to do this meditation discovered tea, that these tea leaves would help them be more lucid and stay awake and be able to listen to the silence and contact the Tao, to flow with the Tao, to feel one with the Tao. And that's another thing. When you go into deep meditation, I actually wrote one book this year called Advanced Meditation. I think that looks backward on your screen.
Yeah.
It does on mine. That's the way the video does it, I guess. But advanced meditation is, as I said, there are a lot of different practices, but the basic one is learning how to quiet your mind and to listen, and to listen, not only listen, but to reach out. When I meditate, the first thing I do, I sit on a zafu, like a Japanese cushion. If I'm in a hotel room, I roll up a bunch of towels and sit on them. And usually I meditate in the bathroom, which is pretty quiet. And it's important that it's dark and quiet. so that you're not distracted by external things. And then you don't want to be distracted by your mind with memories coming up, like it's very hard to stop your mind in the beginning. But
Yes.
you develop this muscle skill, and the brain is a muscle after all, in one respect. You can train the brain with its cooperation to stop thinking for a period of time. So at first, it may only be a few seconds, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then if you really pay attention, you'll notice a thought pop up. Well, if you grab onto that thought, you're giving it energy and it gets bigger and fills up your mind. Or a memory. You say, oh, this morning I got a bite of an insect bite. I wonder if it still hurts, and then you're focused on that bite. All these things rise in your mind, but you can learn through meditating practice. It just takes practice to ignore those things and to keep focusing on the silence. And it's not only just focusing on the silence, because that's like focusing on nothing. That's like hard to do. In the beginning, you focus on your breath. You can focus on your breathing, and to the exclusion of thoughts and memories and ideas and thinking. And when you get familiar enough to focus on your breathing, there's other things you could do, like mantras. You could say prayer over and over and over. And the idea there is that by focusing on these other things, your mind starts calming down a little bit, like a cat or a dog that starts getting a little bit sleepy and stops running around and trying to bother you. And then you really try to feel something new. You're looking for something new, and you believe there's something new to be felt. And believe me, I think anybody can learn to meditate if the interest is there and the will is there. It might help to read a few books that get you interested. There's all kinds of books. Most religions have some form of meditation prayer. Seems like yoga has some of the most direct ones. Or just being really quiet, and you open yourself up to the universe, what the Chinese call the Tao, the flow of energy. You can start feeling it flowing in your body. What I do is focus my awareness on different parts inside my body. The Indians have what they call chakras areas in your throat, in your heart, all the way down. And those actually correspond physiologically to areas that are very rich in endocrine system glands and neurons. It's almost like we have several brains in our body, distributed ones, and each one controls a different region of the body. You can actually focus on those during meditation and start to feel them warm up. And I think that actually helps make them more sensitive to listening to these other dimensions that are hidden.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel it has to be a certain way, and yet each individual, I believe, will find a way that is unique unto themselves. I know.
Definitely, yes.
I found that finding things that I could do that I wasn't thinking allowed me to open myself up to the other side. I call it the other side.
Yeah.
I have tendinitis when I'm getting close to that connection.
Yes, that's good. That's good. I have the same thing. That's called something else that I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll let you finish.
but as soon as that gets really, really loud, I know something good is coming through. So that's when I do my channeling. That's when I do my writing. That's when I do my stepping. I say to people, I tell my ego to step aside, and I allow information to flow through the portal to my higher consciousness, which is linked to cosmic consciousness. So that's how. But everybody does it uniquely. Everybody does it differently.
Yes, and you have to kind of roll your own methodology. It's like sort of make your own religion in a way. Make your own practice. And because we're all so different.
There is a philosophy that says that our reality as we know it is just a projection, a holographic projection from another dimension.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So you have that element of, and I love the fact that you use the term avatar, because I use it all the time. My spirit lives in my avatar, and my spirit will move on, but my body will not.
Exactly. And as a scientist, I agree.
Yeah.
As a scientist,
Can't
no,
prove
but
it.
you mentioned that I call it tinnitus. Some people call it tinnitus. Let me just give you a little story. I was in my mid-20s, and I had spent a few years experimenting with psychedelics, and I stopped that because it kind of gets you tired, and there's only so much you can learn from psychedelics because it doesn't give you a lot of control, and I think you're all over the place. It's like a little bit too scattered to make any sense of it. So I started practicing yoga. I was in the 5th floor walk-up in New York on the Lower East Side, and terrible to have to carry the groceries up 5 flights every time. But it was very quiet up there compared to the lower floors, and so I used to meditate up there and do a lot of hatha yoga. Was into hatha yoga for a lot. I should do it now, but I'm in my late 70s, but I did it more when I was in my 20s when I probably didn't need it. I was doing a shoulder stand one night, and I was practicing meditation while doing hatha yoga, trying not to think thoughts, trying to just listen, like I was talking about before. And suddenly I heard a bright sound in my up almost behind my right eye. It was a bright, very high pitched, very pure tone, a tone. And I got scared for a minute. I thought maybe I'm having a brain aneurysm by doing hatha yoga. So,
Yeah.
But I instead of being afraid of it, I decided to focus on it. Say, what is this? And I noticed that by focusing on it, it got a little bit louder. And so that happened one night, and then 2 nights later, the same thing happened. Although this time there was another slightly less loud sound in like a different part of my brain area. So I focused on that, and it got a little bit louder. And then several different sounds seemed to come in different places. And I thought, oh, this could be dangerous, so I stopped. But that night I had, I think I had a fever. I sweated a lot, a great deal, and I had a hard time sleeping. And I worried about that. But I started becoming used to these sounds. They would come and go. And I found some books in New York. There's a really couple of good bookstores. I used to go to Samuel Weiser's in Lower Manhattan. Had all kinds of occult books. And I was looking for like meditation on inner sounds. And I started finding some. They're mostly Indian ones. Like Sarabachan, the Sikh religion. Any of your audience are Sikhs probably. They know that they also talk about the sound and the importance of meditating on the inner sound. They talk about the inner sound and how it's connects you to astral planes or some kind of thing. But as a scientist, I was trying to really research it. I got a sound generator that makes sine waves, and you could adjust it to different frequencies, different pitches up and down. And I would meditate and then turn that on and try to mesh the sound. But the inner sounds always seem to be higher and brighter. Even though they're little subtle sounds, you can't hear them if you're in a crowd or outside or talking or even when you're thinking, they seem to be vanished. But it turns out there's a whole huge way of yoga called Nada yoga, Nadam yoga, the yoga of the inner sound in Hinduism. And now I live in Assisi now, near where St. Francis used to walk. In fact, St. Francis was supposed to walk through our yard once a long time ago, back in the 1200s maybe. But he wrote something once that was very interesting that I read. He talks about the sound of the heavenly flute. but sometimes he would hear inside himself the sound of the heavenly flute. And that's all he said about it, but that sort of backed up these other yogas that say you should, one of the best ways of making progress in these, contacting these other dimensions is through the inner sound world. So what happened is, unfortunately, in the early days of the internet, I found a like a chat group on tinnitus, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I left this big post. I said, they're all complaining. How do I get rid of it? How do I stop it? I said, this might be the next step of evolution. You might be on the cutting edge of awareness. Yeah. The universe might be wanting you to reach into these other hidden dimensions and communicate with a lot of things, angels, spirits, people you've known. It's a whole unknown world. Boy, I got flamed really bad and they kicked me off the list. because modern medical science says, well, we don't know what it is. We have no idea, so it must be bad for you. But on the other hand, it does bother people. And I think about 5 years ago, I had a root canal. And that night, my tinnitus really took off. It got very loud and lots of sounds. So I have a feeling that the tooth was connected to my brain somehow.
Probably.
And it was very concerning because I couldn't quiet it down and it kept me from going to sleep. And I was fighting it. I was trying to fight it and make it go quiet. But, that doesn't really work. So I think all these people who think tinnitus is a disease are fighting it. They're trying to make it go away. So I changed my attitude. I thought, well, instead of fighting it, I was lying there trying to sleep. Why don't I just go into it and go with it and just listen to it and try to figure out where it is and where the different sounds are coming from. And that worked very well for me. I was able to quickly fall asleep while not avoiding them, but actually listening to them. And since then, when I meditate, the inner sound experience has gotten much richer. But besides the sounds, there's a certain feeling that you have. I sense that it's a feeling in my heart area. When I have a really good friend, Professor Coombs, who is the head of the Society for Consciousness Studies. He was my mentor, and he signed my Ph.D. dissertation for approval at the end. We became really good friends over the years, and he passed away last year. So he and I talked about death and trying to communicate after death. So I try to communicate with him when I meditate. Before I try to go into the absolute silence and just listen, I say a few prayers. I say some, I know a couple Latin prayers because I was brought up Catholic, but I also know some Hindu prayers. Probably my Catholic friends would get really upset if they knew I said Hindu prayers, but I do, because it's all one universe. That's why they call it universe, one story. It's, and I look at different religions as different flowers. Why would you want just one flower? I'm going to cut all the other flowers down. I only like roses or, orchids. I mean, the God of this universe, the creator of this universe, made so many different things. Everything is different. Each one of us is so different. There's no single fingerprint that matches another.
Right.
So why not allow different religions? And they're all, I lived in Saudi Arabia for a while, with my son and daughter and ex. And we worked for Aramco, a big oil company. But I was able to talk to Saudi people who they'd always say, well, what do you think about religions? They're not supposed to talk about it, but we would anyway. I say, well, I believe in that your religion is a true religion, the one true religion, but that my religion is also the one true religion. They're all one. They're all one.
Exactly.
And if God didn't want different religions, probably God wouldn't have, urged people to create different religions. There's hundreds of religions. They're more like cultural language of of how to understand these hidden dimensions.
Yeah.
And these hidden dimensions appear to saints in the Catholic Church and Hindu saints. There were some people, in fact, in the Yoga Sutras that I mentioned before, there's one of the shlokas says, these new inner sense comes from several ways. By birth, you can be born genetically and be able to hear, say, tinnitus and stuff, and this other. You have a way of contacting these other dimensions. It says our drugs, our pranayama, which is breathing, watching your breath and breathing. Sometimes breathing like, kind of hyperventilating, and meditation, and samadhi. And the book talks about how to practice samadhi, and how to focus on the silence.
I usually let it, if I'm trying to communicate with someone who has crossed over, I let it just I let it surround me and then take me through what I call a portal. And once through the portal, I can find who it is that has just crossed over and communicate if it's appropriate. But I think what lots of people don't understand is just because you can go that far, you can cross the portal, you can find the consciousness on the other side, doesn't mean that consciousness necessarily wants to communicate with you. So
exactly, yeah. You have to be careful too, because I look at it as like an ocean of consciousness. There's an ocean of consciousness out there, and yes, normally we're cut off from it because physiologically our brains are always active, and there's electric circuits going around on your cerebral cortex, the outside of the brain, and that's called the Faraday cage in electrical engineering. When you have a lot of moving electrons, they've actually made cages out of it to isolate things inside from the external radio waves. So when you stop thinking and stop all these electrical things, you suddenly become aware of the wider universe of consciousness.
Yes.
The danger is that wider universe of consciousness may have things like sharks. I mean, it's not all benign.
No.
I mean, we have serial killers and some horrible things that happen that people, I think, get taken over really by very dark forces that they can't control.
I usually don't just go swimming for the heck of it. I'm usually looking for someone. So
yes. You have to be
so that there's a magnet that pulls me in, and if it's going to be writing that I'm going to be doing, I open the portal and I open myself, and I allow information or wisdom or insight to come through, so that I always feel very protected. So
it's very important. And I have a little altar that I use where I meditate, kind of a low coffee table thing. And I have pictures of my family, my mother, father, grandfather, some of the people I really found very important in my life that I've studied, like Teilhard de Chardin, and some Indian people like Sri Aurobindo is one, and some saints. I actually also paint icons, or they call them Russian icons.
yes.
I do Russian icons for meditation. They're very important in the Orthodox Church, which I have some very good Orthodox friends. So I went to Russia twice to learn how to paint icons, because it's a very ancient tradition. You grind your own pigments and you mix it with egg yolk, and you paint it on wood, and they last forever because they're just pure ground pigments, rocks and stones and crystals, and burnt umber and all kinds of cool things. And the icon, you look at it, you stare at it, even if you're in the Orthodox Church during a service, you stare at when it becomes a gateway. They call it a gateway to the eternal, a gateway, and most of them show a certain saint, an Orthodox saint, or Jesus Christ. Although I have one that's more Hindu that I use also, but the idea is it kind of focuses your awareness when you're meditating on something that's positive and real in those dimensions that will not get you in trouble.
Yes.
You need to have some kind of a guide, and if you go through the right door, you'll be safe, according to Orthodox iconographers.
Well, I used to
Which I
paint.
am.
I painted a whole series of mandalas that I
Yes.
use that way, and it's called the Cosmic Deck of Initiation. And I don't know, up on top of the screen, you see the little.
Yeah.
That's one of
yours, huh?
That's one of my cards. Yeah.
That's very nice. Yeah. Yeah, and all of these will help focus your awareness in a certain vibrational way, instead of just being scattered. But prayers are really good too. I mean, that's another.
Oh yeah.
My first book I wrote about 10 years ago was Developing Supersensible Perception Through Drugs, Prayer, Entheogenic Experiences, and Meditation. And prayer, almost everyone is brought up in a family that teaches them something about the history of their religion and their the basic facts of their own religion in their tradition. And a lot of people, they grow up and they say, oh, they get away from it.
Yeah.
But it's good to, if you're trying to explore consciousness, to go back to some of those basic prayers that you learned when you were like 3 or 4 years old and use them again. That connects you with your earlier self, and it connects you with all the people who've ever said that prayer. That's the whole theory of the science of mantra. You say something that other people have said over and over, and you sort of join them in what Teilhard de Chardin calls the noosphere. He has this concept of different groups of consciousness coalesce in a larger one. And there's a whole noosphere for human beings, but there's also smaller noospheres for a particular tribe, or your family has a noosphere of coalescing. I have a good friend who's a professor who's written a book about classroom. He noticed that after 3 or 4 sessions in a class, sort of a group consciousness starts forming. It's very, at first he didn't notice it, but then when he started noticing it, he started focusing on it more, and he saw more and more evidence of it, that a sort of a group consciousness starts to form in a really good, healthy classroom. And it's like a little sub noosphere. Unfortunately, we also have them in political groups. You have a noosphere of MAGA people, or a noosphere of Maha people, or a noosphere of French people.
Is a noosphere similar to an egregore?
Oh, egregore, say that?
Egregore.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Egregore is a term for a group consciousness.
Oh yeah, then it would be. But
and it eventually, if there's enough focus on it, it definitely can become an entity unto itself, like
yes,
a Catholic Church, like a political party, like
that's a key thing that people should realize, that these are living things, these groups. And there's a warfare going on, unfortunately, with some of them. Some of them are very aggressive and they want to expand and get more members. They're living things, Everything is conscious in the universe. It's not just the avatars that, we're using for our particular consciousness in some hidden dimension. There's groups of these things, like when you see a flock of birds. Like yesterday coming home, I saw a really large flock of birds. When I was a kid, I saw a lot of them, but they go in unison.
Yes,
amazing patterns. They all go exactly the same. They know what they're doing. And I've seen fish like that too when I've gone diving.
Schools of fish, yeah. Is that a telepathic connection, or is that?
Yes, very much so. It's beyond time and space. it's within these other dimensions. They know how to link together, and then they do their thing. And it's fascinating reality. It's very good. But I don't, I have no idea how all these things evolve, but it's beyond my pay grade. Consciousness is a fundamental in the universe, and we can actually change our own consciousness and develop it so that we have a wider connection to feelings and information that will help us survive.
I tell people all the time that you create your reality by your perception of it.
Yes.
So that it's a matter of what are you focusing on, what are you projecting, and then you live in that projection.
Yes, definitely. Physicists deal with the same thing. David Bohm was one who was really interested in perception, because they found out that by observing an experiment in quantum physics, it changes the experiment. You can't look at something without changing it in quantum mechanics. But and he believed, and I also believe, even us at our level, we're not quantum, we're big guys.
Yeah.
We affect things by the things we, when you hear someone talk, you absorb their ideas, you tend to agree with them, you're becoming part of their noosphere a little bit. That's why it's important to find people that you resonate with and support them by hanging out with them to some extent, whether it's just reading their words or watching them on YouTube, or even better, going to meetings and meeting them, face to face, where you can feel their energy.
Isn't there also, though, a problem with the fact that if you are in a group, you lose a part of your own identity? If you're
that can happen. That can also happen.
That's you have to be very cautious about those people you're choosing to frequent their energetics, so to speak, because you don't want to become them. You want to agree with them, but when I think that's the main thing I have about large groups of people, because if you're a part of a large group, you've lost your identity and your focus, and then you have to back up and start again. But that's okay, because we are eternal, so we can do that.
I've always been kind of a black sheep, so I'm always on the outside. I didn't totally buy into everything like the Catholic nuns taught me, and I don't buy into everything the yogis tell me, and I don't buy into everything the scientists tell me. You have to be an individual that's centered and have some practice that helps you center, which is meditation and learning how to be silent inside, so that you can absorb rather than just be, blown by the wind of the crowd you're with. So it's.
I think one of the things in your book that I found very, very true was that people who have not experienced that transition into a higher consciousness, that it's hard to explain it to them.
Yeah, because they don't have the words,
No.
Words, they have better words in Sanskrit, they do, and probably in Chinese too, I have to say. But English is a little bit, a little poverty with words, like love, the word love. When you're talking about love, it's about love an ice cream cone, love my job, love my cat, love to take a bath. So the word can be used so many ways, and which is good for poetry, but not very good for communication. And especially when you're trying to describe inner states of consciousness, like you took ayahuasca, you come back and you try to explain. Well, you don't have the words. You don't have the words to do it. And so you end up saying, groovy, man. It's
Yeah.
like
I,
you
I've,
can't
I've,
say it. You can't
I've,
say it.
I've not done ayahuasca. I've heard it explained, but I can't explain to somebody where I go when I go through that portal either. I'm
Yeah.
no longer physical. I'm etheric. I'm spirit. I'm not a person anymore. I'm a thought process. And it, it's hard to explain.
So how do you do this? You do it totally by yourself in the dark, in the quiet, or if I can ask, some people don't want to tell you about their meditation because it's like asking about their bank account. How much is in your bank account? What is your net worth?
Oh, I can tell you
Do you
that.
meditate? Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I took a
no,
course. I took a graduate course on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which is all about meditation. And, there were like 6 people and the professor. And one day I said, "Why don't we go around the table and try to explain what we experience when we meditate?" They all looked at me like, "Oh,
which is,
no, that's
but
private." And then, how do you learn anything if people don't share? But
I've
then, if you
been,
don't have the words,
I've been doing it for so long that I basically sit down and I basically say, I'm open and I go.
yeah.
It's, but I'm 81. I've been doing it forever. So it's kind of easy for me to just let go, knowing I can come back safely and go through that portal and be in a place where I have just, there's magic there. It's wonderful. It's better than Disneyland. It's just amazing.
When did you first begin doing this? In your 20s or earlier?
Yeah, probably in my late teens, but my parents divorced in a very, a long time ago when it was no long, when it was definitely something everybody frowned upon. So we were isolated
Ah,
and people wouldn't let their kids play with us. And so my
wow.
sister and I were alone and I had that empty space and I filled it with the other side.
That's amazing. That's a good thing you did. Wow. Well, I'm catching up with you. I'll be 80 next year. So people on our stage start to think a lot about the transition to the next state of consciousness. And
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of Tibetan yogis that talk about transition, what to do, the death experience, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And like I said, my good colleague, Dr. Coombs, who passed away last year, we really try to communicate when I meditate these days, and I really feel we're making progress. But so far, I don't have a Ouija board. Maybe I should get one. That I think when I was in my 20s, I had a Ouija board, and it worked pretty good. You know what they are, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were really popular in the late 1800s.
They were. I don't advise children using them, but if adults want to play, that's fine.
No.
But
I see more and more scientists getting interested in consciousness. They've sort of gone as far as they can in measuring space and time phenomena, and they still have no idea what consciousness is. I wrote a book called The Electromagnetic Brain. As an electromagnetic engineer, I pretty much think that has a lot to do with consciousness. The energy, electromagnetic energy plasma that we all radiate and live within is a big part of it. And I think science will turn that way pretty soon. And I think there's all kinds of things, a combination of computers and electronics can do with people's awareness.
I don't think they're ever going to be able to physically explain it, but they can certainly spiritually experience it.
Yeah, they should focus away from the microscopes and the rulers and go into the human awareness. Just train people to explore these other regions of reality that are around us. And there's other alien civilizations, I'm sure, that we could contact through this.
I'm sure too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people have done that. Some of the books, I think somebody called Seth.
Oh yeah, Seth Speaks. Yeah.
Yeah. Really amazing stuff. You can channel some of these other entities, and that's a very real thing. There's still a lot of scientists who are skeptical about all of this, but they don't have any better answers, and the material is there. There's thousands of books written by people who are able to do this. Not only but
don't forget, scientists are basically publish or perish, and they don't want to be wrong. And
they don't want to be criticized. They're afraid of being criticized. So they have little building blocks building up on science. And so you can't ask that question. When I was one of my last years of studying electrical engineering, I was in a class, and we were talking about power going in the walls, the circuits in the buildings, and how they emit electromagnetic waves, and people were kind of worried about maybe they affect people's health. Or people near a big high voltage power pole, they might get cancer or something. So there was that kind of interest. But it just hit me this question. I raised my hand and said, as anybody looking into the possibility that this electromagnetic energy in our walls might be conscious. It might be conscious of us. It might be a certain awareness. And there was absolute silence. The guy looked like he was going to throw me out of the room, And I thought it was a very valid question, and still, the electricity that's all around us, this might be more aware than you think.
Oh, I agree. And interdimensional stuff going on all the time. I frankly, if indeed there are UFOs, and I know there are unidentified flying objects, but if there are interdimensional people there, they haven't been in a tin can. They've come through an interdimensional portal. There's no way anybody's sitting in a tin can. It just ain't happening.
No.
Just me. I just noticed, our time. This has been so lovely. I so thank you for taking the time to share with me.
Well, I've enjoyed it. Yeah, maybe we can chat again someday.
Absolutely. And
all right.
And your book was fascinating, and I had a lovely time with it. I struggled with some of it, but most of it I understood. And I so appreciate you taking the time. And I apologize for the difference in our times. I just
I live in Italy. I love Italy, and I've been here 4 years now, and it's beautiful. The food is good and cheap, and
even better.
For your listeners, if you want to see some of my other books, just go to Amazon.com and look for Shelli Joye. Search for Shelli Joye, and you'll see I've got other books on Teilhard de Chardin and yoga, meditation, advanced meditation, and theories of consciousness also. So you might, and some of them are Kindle even, so they don't cost very much.
Okay. Just hold on for a second. I'm going to have our exit play, and I want to talk to you just a second after we
Sure.